broadcast tonight, thousands of doctors in Korea stage a one-day strike for the first time in 14 years in protest of a government plan to introduce medical reforms. The government unveils a detailed version of personal data protection measures as it deals with a series of leaks that have shocked the nation. Plus, the Malaysia Airlines mystery search for wreckage of the missing plane continues in the seas of Vietnam and Malaysia, as 2 passengers are confirmed to have been traveling on stolen passports. With these stories and more next on ARIRANG News at 8. Good evening to our viewers in Korea and hello to those of you who are watching from around the world. It's Monday, March 10th here in Seoul. I am Yoo Ji-hye. The thousands of doctors in Korea took part in a one-day strike this Monday in protest of a government plan to enact reforms in the medical sector. In turn, the government has vowed to deal sternly with the walkout. Our Kwon Soa has more on the doctors' first collective medical suspension in 14 years.
A one-day strike led by the Korean Medical Association began earlier this Monday morning and ended at 6 p.m.
Doctors refused to provide medical services and many hospitals across the nation were closed.
The government ordered doctors to return to work immediately. The Health Ministry's first estimates say that 29% of doctors nationwide participated in Monday's walkout. That appears to be low considering that 77% who voted in favor of the strike and the fact that the Korean Intern Resident Association had earlier announced its participation. President Park Geun-hye has reiterated the government's vow to take legal measures against striking doctors, including a 15-day business suspension.
국민에게 피해를 주는 행위에 대해서는 반드시 책임을 묻고 법과 원칙에 따라 엄정 대응할 것입니다.
It's regrettable that we had to make the extreme decision of closing hospitals and not treating patients. I am resentful toward the government.
The KMA strike was called in protest of a government plan to introduce a telemedicine system that would allow for patients in remote areas to be diagnosed via webcam, smartphone, or even email. KMA doctors say it will impair the quality of medical services. The Medical Association is also up in arms over a government move to run for-profit subsidiaries. While the government says it will improve the nation's medical industry, the KMA says it will only lead to a hike in medical bills. Doctors are concerned the reforms could eventually lead to privatization of the medical sector. Following Monday's walkout, the strike will transition to a work-to-rule action starting Tuesday and running through March 23rd, meaning doctors won't work more than 40 hours a week and will treat patients for no longer than 15 minutes. A full 6-day strike is then planned to begin on the 24th, which, unlike today's action, could also include the closing of emergency rooms and intensive care centers. The medical strike stands to be the largest in 14 years, and with negotiations between both sides at a stalemate, some fear it will continue for the long term. Kwon Soa, ARIRANG News.
Following a series of security breaches by financial institutions in the country that affected tens of millions of people here in Korea, the government has unveiled a set of preventive measures, from tougher punitive actions to improvement in the data management system. Our Na Young-kyung has the details.
From the latter half of this year, financial institutions will only be able to ask for customers' resident registration numbers at the initial application stage. After that, people will not be asked to provide their registration numbers, but instead be asked to verify their identity through other safer means. The registration numbers have been at the center of a recent series of high-level personal information security breaches, and toughening their use is a key part of a package unveiled by the government on Monday to fight widespread leaks of personal data. Financial institutions will also not be allowed to keep collected information for more than 5 years after the final transaction.
Apart from the information that's absolutely necessary, all other data that the financial institution either has or has provided to a third party will be destroyed. The police and the prosecution will jointly and indefinitely crack down on breaches.
The government has also tightened the penalty system. If a company is found to have used illegally obtained personal information to make profits, it will be fined 3% of the total sales made through using the data. Also, a fine of up to 5 billion won, or roughly $4.7 million will be levied on firms that leak customer information. Officials reaffirmed that customers will only have to give just their basic information, such as their registration number and date of birth, for receiving financial services. People will also be given the option to retract on an agreement to provide personal data and also block telemarketing calls from financial institutions. But industry experts are already questioning whether these measures will be effective, saying most of them have either been practiced or are merely a reiteration of similar policies from the past. 나현경, 아리랑 뉴스.
Some strong words from President Park Geun-hye about regulations in Korean society. In a meeting with her senior secretaries on Monday, the president, who has pledged to cut down on red tape as part of her 3-year economic plan, referred to unnecessary regulations as an enemy and went even further by calling them cancerous tumors. She said that Korea will only be able to innovate and sustain growth by getting rid of useless regulations. Pundits took note of the president's stronger tone compared to past remarks on the subject. They say it suggests she may be frustrated with the slow progress in rooting out regulations, despite her repeated calls. Korea, the world's most wired nation, is looking to beef up its information, communication, and technology infrastructure this year by funneling nearly 5 trillion won, or roughly $4.6 billion into this sector. Tim Yoon-gil has more on where the money will be spent.
Korea's Science Ministry says it will inject 4.9 trillion won, or some $4.6 billion into the country's information technology sector this year in order to fuel economic growth and enhance the country's overall competitiveness. The Ministry of Science, ICT and Future Planning says the money will be used to fund numerous projects in central government agencies that were initiated by regional governments. $1 billion will be used to strengthen IT research, while another billion will be used to upgrade the nation's information and communications technology infrastructure. Key projects to receive large amounts of funding include the country's digital infrastructure and initiatives to increase the country's presence in cloud computing, mobile services, and next-generation mobile wireless technology. The Trade Ministry says ICT exports have increased 8.4% this year from last to $12.8 billion, fueled by an increase in exports of mobile phones and semiconductors. That gave Korea an ICT trade surplus of $6.6 billion in February, which is a 1.6% increase from the same month last year. Global technology research group Gartner says the world's ICT market will grow 3.6% this year, fueled by a recovery in the smartphone and semiconductor markets. Tim Yoon-gil, ARIRANG News.
The social networking and mobile communication services are shoring up their resources as mobile messaging sees a surge in popularity. Son Jang-in reports.
Companies in the social networking and mobile communications sector are enjoying the benefits of a robust and growing mobile messaging market as they gear up for a battle that would determine who will become the top brand for more than 1 billion smartphone users worldwide. In Korea, search engine Naver is #1 thanks to its mobile messaging app Line. Line's annual sales last year stood at $427 million, a 690% increase from a year earlier. The messaging application has grown to more than 370 million subscribers since its creation in 2011. Naver's market value in Korea is $27 billion, the 5th largest in the country, and there's only a small gap between it and 4th place SK Hynix and 3rd place Hyundai Mobis. Naver saw its stock value skyrocket after it split from NHN last August. That landed the company in 6th place, allowing it to overtake Kia Motors in December. And just last month, it beat POSCO to take 5th place. In the global mobile messaging market, Facebook is also back on track since topping its sales target in the 3rd quarter of last year. Its recent acquisition of fast-growing messaging startup WhatsApp has also helped it maintain its momentum. Social media giant Twitter is also going strong. Its initial public offering was priced at $26 in November last year, but now its share price has nearly doubled to roughly $54. China's biggest internet company, Tencent, which operates Weibo, the Chinese version of Twitter, has 600 million registered users and a share price of nearly $80. 손정인, ARIRANG News.
Korea is one of 5 Asian nations where the income gap is increasing rapidly. A recent Asian Development Bank report on income inequality in 28 Asian nations shows the figure in Korea widening at the 5th fastest pace between 1990 and 2010. The income inequality worsened most in China, followed by Indonesia, Laos, and Sri Lanka over the period. The bank said globalization and technological developments have led to rapid growth in Asian countries, but many of them have failed to improve their income distribution systems.
For the latest news that impacts Korea and the world, join Yoo Ji-hye for a lively half hour that covers politics, business, international news, and much more. Live at 8 every weeknight on ARIRANG TV.
Move aimed at fostering startups is part of the government's 3-year economic innovation plan. Over now to elections in North Korea. The communist state held its first parliamentary elections under the current leader Kim Jong-un, which pundits say stand to further consolidate his power base. The result? Well, 100% of the vote went to the young Kim. Our Connie Kim has the details.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has been elected to a new rubber stamp legislature in the nation's first parliamentary elections since he assumed power. The North's official Korean News Central Agency said Monday that Kim won with 100% of the vote.
All voters in the number 111 Mount Baekdu constituency voted for Kim Jong-un in the 13th Supreme People's Assembly.
The Supreme People's Assembly is North Korea's utmost sovereign organization, the equivalent to South Korea's National Assembly. The nationwide elections are expected to consolidate Kim's power base after the recent purge of close aides, including Jang Song-taek, was executed last year. Analysts say the elections will likely promote officials depending on their loyalty to the young leader. There is also a high possibility that Kim Jong-un's younger sister Kim Yo-jong will hold a key position in the Supreme People's Assembly. She was listed along with senior officials of the Central Committee of the ruling Workers' Party.
Korean Central Television called Kim Yo-jong after Hwang Byung-seo, the vice department director of the Workers' Party. This means that Kim Yo-jong could hold a similar position because of when her name was announced.
North Korean experts speculate that Kim Yo-jong will replace her aunt Kim Kyung-hee in taking care of Kim Jong-un's slush funds. The turnover rate of the new Supreme People's Assembly, which has a total of 689 deputies, is expected to be 40%. Aside from Kim's appointment as deputy, the rest of the results have not been announced. Connie Kim, ARIRANG News.
Pope Francis is coming to South Korea. The presidential office of Cheongwade has confirmed that the Pope will arrive in Korea on August 14th on the invitation of both Seoul and the Korean Catholic Church. During his 5-day trip, Pope Francis will attend Asian Youth Day events in the central city of Daejeon, beautify 124 Koreans, and also pay a courtesy call to President Park Geun-hye. The pontiff, who expressed his adoration for Korea when making the Asian country's 3rd cardinal last month, is expected to call for love and peace on the Korean peninsula and in Northeast Asia. He'll be the first pope to visit Korea since Pope John Paul II came in October 1989. On the culture front, the Korea National Opera Company will present its first production of the year, Don Giovanni, this week in Seoul. Conducted by Italian maestro Marco Zambelli, the production features internationally acclaimed Korean singers, including baritone Kong Byung-woo and lyric soprano Lee Yun-ah. Based on the legend of the famous seducer Don Juan, Mozart's 2-act opera has been one of the world's most beloved opera pieces since its premiere in Prague in the late 18th century. Don Giovanni opens at 7:30 p.m. on Wednesday at Seoul Arts Center and runs through Sunday. Moving now to some of the top stories on the global front, from the ongoing search operations for a missing passenger jet to the fast-moving developments in Ukraine. We go over to our Paul Lee at the News Center. Now, Paul, let's start with the Malaysian airliner that just vanished this weekend. What's the latest?
Well, GA, still no sign of the plane or the 239 people who were on board. But China has lashed out at Malaysia for the way it's handled the investigation of the Boeing 777 that disappeared over the South China Sea this past weekend. Our Kim Hyun-bin has the details.
China's state-run media has lashed out at the Malaysian government and its national carrier, saying that their handling of the missing passenger jet was not done promptly. The ruling Chinese Communist Party said in an editorial on Monday that the initial response from Malaysia was not swift enough. Nearly two-thirds of the 239 people aboard the plane were from China, and if the death count is confirmed, it will be China's second deadliest air disaster recorded. This comes as officials investigating the disappearance are said to be narrowing the focus of their inquiries on the possibility that the plane disintegrated mid-flight. A Vietnamese plane has spotted possible debris, a door and a section of the tail, from the missing Malaysia Airlines jet that vanished on Saturday. Dozens of boats and planes attempted to confirm the find, but were unable to. A source close to the preliminary investigation told Reuters that the fact there doesn't appear to be much debris could indicate the aircraft broke up at around 35,000 feet. Asked about the possibility of an explosion, such as a bomb, the source said there was no evidence yet of foul play. Terrorism is not being ruled out, especially as Interpol has confirmed at least 2 passengers on board have been traveling on fake passports.
On the possibility of hijack, we are not ruling any possibility. However, it's important to state that our main concern is to focus our effort in finding the missing aircraft.
Interpol says a check of all documents used to board the plane had revealed more suspect passports that were being further investigated. Just an hour into the flight, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 disappeared and is presumed to have crashed off the coast of Vietnam. Kim Hyun-bin, ARIRANG News.
Right, Paul, going back for a moment to the criticism being lobbed at Malaysia, what more could authorities there have done?
Well, GA, most of the criticism coming out of China's state-run media is focused on Malaysia's national carrier and aviation officials. They say families of the victims should have been notified more quickly and that stricter security checks should have been in place to prevent the 2 passengers from boarding with stolen passports. Beijing's foreign ministry has also urged Malaysia to step up its efforts for the missing airliner. When asked about the possibility of terrorism, the ministry added it was still too early to jump to any conclusions. As of early Monday, 40 ships and 34 planes from 9 countries had joined the search.
Right, moving over to northern Africa, here a North Korean flagged vessel finds itself in a tense standoff between the armed rebels and government security forces. Now tell us more.
Well, Libyan authorities say they have dispatched a force to the rebel-held port of El Sider to stop the tanker from leaving with crude oil sold without government permission. Libyan officials said Sunday that the force consists of Navy and pro-government militias and added that it has been authorized to bomb the tanker if it does not comply.
Orders were given and all efforts are being undertaken to stop and seize the tanker, if necessary by a strike, if it does not follow orders.
The tanker called Morning Glory docked on Saturday and has been reportedly unloaded with some $36 million worth of crude oil. There's been no sign yet of immediate military action.
And Paul, let's now move on to Europe, where Ukrainian crisis continues to unfold. What are the latest developments there?
Well, GA, tens of thousands of Ukrainians have held rival pro-unity and pro-Russian rallies, with Crimea at the center of this geopolitical struggle. Crowds of pro-Russian Crimea residents carried a giant Russian flag through the streets of Simferopol on Sunday, ahead of an upcoming referendum on March 16th, which will decide whether the current Ukrainian region should rejoin Russia. Western countries have dismissed the referendum as illegal. U.S. President Barack Obama has invited Ukrainian Prime Minister Arseniy Yatsenyuk for talks at the White House. The 2 leaders are expected to discuss a support package of more than $1 billion in economic assistance. Back to you, Jay.
All right, Polly, with a wrap-up of the international stories making headlines around the world, I will see you back in about 2 hours for more updates. And time to get a check on the weather with our Kim Bo-kyung at the Weather Center. Now, Bo-kyung, dry conditions in the country are causing all sorts of trouble. How serious is it?
That's right, Ji-hye. The dry atmosphere and strong winds contributed to at least 4 forest fires today alone. Well, as you can see, dry weather advisories have been issued throughout the country, and March and April are recognized as the driest months here in Korea, with humidity levels at around 50%. Now, things are looking very dry over in Daegu, where levels are down to 13%, and Seoul is at around 44%. Taking a closer look at the current conditions, well, due to a high pressure system from the West Sea, we're seeing clear skies across the map, and these conditions will continue through tomorrow. But nationwide showers are forecast on Wednesday and Thursday, which will hopefully appease some of that dry atmosphere. Other than that, there looks to be a big temperature gap of about 10 degrees tomorrow between the day and night, so please be prepared for that. Moving on to tomorrow's readings, Seoul starts off the day at 0 degrees with a high of 12. Gwangju and Busan reach 16 and 13 degrees respectively. As for other regions, Daejeon and Jeju make it to 14 degrees, while Dokdo tops out at 9. That's all the weather updates for Korea, and here's a look at the international weather.
And that brings us to the end of our newscast. I'm Yoo Ji-hye in Seoul. I'll be back with more news updates in our primetime news at 10 p.m. Korea time. See you then.